Welcome to Framework. I'm John, one of the hosts of Framework. With me, as always, the other host of Framework, Al. How are you today?
I am good. Just old and crotchety is how I'm feeling. So
yeah, perfect for the subject at hand. And joining us to talk about this subject, Tor Klippert, returning to the program. How are you today?
Happy to be here.
Okay, and the subject is, well, it's wide-ranging. But I guess the way to start is this July that just ended here in 2024 was the month of the Barnes & Noble 50% off Criterion Collection sale. And within the physical media community, that's sort of an event, sort of a big deal. You can kind of go, the idea is you go to Barnes & Noble online or brick and mortar store, and all the Criterion Collection discs, 4K, Blu-ray, might even be some DVDs left, are 50% off. And so these are notoriously expensive. Most of them are $40 a Blu-ray, $50 for a 4K. They go down to half price. This happens twice a year. So this is when everyone buys their Criterion discs for $20 or $25, as the case may be.
Everyone in the physical media community, which feels like that it's going to be the new
everyone.
It's going to be the next derisive way that Gen Z refers to millennials.
That is the fear. I got a little kid who I'm thinking I'm collecting a birthright for her. She's just going to make fun of me for it. And I say that because I am indeed a physical media DVD, Blu-ray, 4K collector at this point. I have, I'm looking at my stack right now. I'm guessing it's got to be 600 movies over there, somewhere in that 500 to 600 titles on my list. This has been collected over the last, across the 21st century, essentially, ever since they became available. I've definitely got some old Warner Brothers Snapcase DVDs over there. Those are the, I don't need to explain them. If you know, old DVD cases, how they used to look. And, I've replaced a lot of them, I've upgraded from Blu-ray to 4K in some cases. That being every 10 years or so, they get a better looking version of discs available that you can get. It sort of drags me back in once I think I'm out every time. And I partook in the Barnes & Noble 50% off sale. I only got two, which I think that's okay. But it also was kind of like, I'm a little bit forced to deal with it and reckon with it as I make a specific trip out to Barnes & Noble to look at what they have. I was hoping to pick up Inside Llewyn Davis. They were sold out. I got other things instead. Doing a DVD purchasing trip is kind of a rare thing now. It's something I don't often do, which I imagine is for the better.
It's like going to the harbor and waving at a ship as it sails out to sea.
it's almost like train spotting.
A little bit. I mean, which is available.
You know when the one you want is going to be going by. Yeah.
So I wonder, why am I doing this? Why at this point in my life am I still buying these things? I mean, it's essentially like Funko Pops anymore. I can't convince myself that I'm just making sure I've got a copy of my favorite movies in case I want to watch them. I don't have to rent them. Renting is so easy now. There's a Blockbuster Video app on my, not actually Blockbuster, but it's like a Blockbuster video store on my television. I just pull it up. I select anything I want for the most part.
That's great until, say, Blockbuster disappears somehow.
Yes.
Because it did.
Yes.
Or they lose the rights to, we have 400 Blockbuster locations on our phones and on our TVs just available there. But also, any given week, 7 or 8 of those 400 Blockbusters are closing, and some of them are trading their half their video collection to others. And you'd think it would be more streamlined, but it seems to only be getting more confusing.
this is the thing. This is this new. I was kind of like okay with the idea that like physical media was this dinosaur that I was propping up, and that it was a bit of a mild addiction, one of the healthier ones you can have possibly, but it's an addiction nonetheless. And now in the new current media landscape, I'm like, actually, maybe it's good that I own this shit. Maybe this is actually beneficial. Maybe I'm smart. Maybe I'm ahead of the curve here.
We're the monks in the monasteries living out the dark ages, preserving texts.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, there's a couple different ways of looking at this. One is, yes, I mean, especially as you're getting more pessimistic about the way that technology is trending these days, and how the advances in tech seem to be making everything less reliable rather than more reliable in a weird way. It means that you can, your same collection that you've had the whole time, it can now shift between being, maybe it was Funko Pops at one point that you were just doing compulsively to scratch some diagnosable itch of collector's urging,
right?
And then maybe you're the monk preserving text through the dark ages, but also maybe like your physical media collection has gone from Funko Pops to like Doomsday Prepper freeze dried bags of beans and shit.
It's got an element of that. Yeah, it's definitely got an element of that.
I might be getting ahead of the game. Did anyone see the Netflix picture last year, Leave the World Behind?
That was the Obama produced one?
That's all anybody who hasn't seen it knows about it, is that Obama produced it. Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding. Yep, that's me. Okay,
okay, because what it was about was an attack on the country that disrupted our internet and our communication systems, and the lesson of it was that's all you needed to do to destroy a country. You didn't need tanks and guns.
Yeah, no shit. Okay, yeah.
One of the running gags was a little girl who was trying to stream a TV show on her tablet and lost the connection before she could watch the last episode. And spoiler alert for a movie that had major stars in it and nobody fucking saw, is at the end, the little girl makes it into a billionaire's bunker where they have a massive library of DVDs, and she's finally able to watch the rest of her show despite everybody else dying. And that was a Netflix movie. And I think it's interesting that it actually ended with an argument for physical media.
Oh, I thought you need to end on the gag that she watches the finale and hates it.
Like it's lost or something. Yeah, like
and now she's mad she can't tweet nasty things about the creators.
The fact that the finale of the show she's watching is Friends, and that the end credits run over that song, I think is enough. It was actually a pretty good movie. It wasn't great, but it was good.
I meant to, but it's one of the many. This is another thing. I mean, streaming movies, when they come out, I'm kind of just like, oh, well, it's streaming. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll get to it. I don't know. And I would say most of the time I don't, like that Adam Sandler film where he, talks to a spider in outer space. I would 100% have gone to that movie. I would definitely have watched that.
We had it for a week at our theater because we're one of the few theaters that books Netflix movies. Mm-hmm. And nobody came. It looked really interesting. I didn't get to see all of it before it was gone because I'm still mostly a theater person. I don't stream very much.
I do a weekly movie podcast. I don't even know what you guys are talking about. This Adam Sandler movie where he talks to a spider.
It's so hard because these movies aren't publicized. They're not advertised. If you're not on the system, that's what they want. They want you to get a Netflix subscription if you want to know what's going on, because you don't find out about these movies any other way. And we get these theatrical runs, these 1 or 2 week theatrical runs, and the reviews don't drop until the window is over and it's streaming. And that's when people come and say, hey, you had that movie last week. Yeah, it's gone. Thanks.
That seems like a crazy gambit because I did totally miss. Even having a Netflix subscription, I totally missed that one. And it's gone now. And it's there, but I'm not going to seek it. Yeah, I'm not going to seek it out, though.
It's been there forever, though. Like since March, you could just watch it anytime. And I've never done it. Never done it. Axel F, another one I would have definitely seen by now if it came out in theaters. Reviews be damned. As it is, I just never watch it. And
that edges into another territory, though. Now, just the legacy sequel franchise IP barrel is scraped so thin that, 10 years ago, I would have seen Axel F in theaters, but that's not just 10 years ago in terms of streaming stuff. It's also, or like technology changes. It's 10 years ago in terms of there's been Willow
A lot.
legacy sequel series and every other thing.
I thought you were going to say human history. There's been a lot going on in human history in the last 10 years.
Yeah, among them, Hollywood and American pop culture becoming an Ouroboros that's just eating its own tail of the 80s and 90s. The last time we kind of built shit in this country, as far as pop culture goes, is what it feels like.
IP or not IP?
Well, I mean, Beverly Hills Cop was IP already back then, I guess, but there's a difference. You guys can know the difference between Beverly Hills Cop 3 and Axel F intuitively.
Well,
part of it's that it's streaming, and part of it's just that, well, they had to do it at that point.
I hear it's better than Beverly Hills Cop 3.
High praise.
But that's a film that I might well own. I don't know. It might be in like a Beverly Hills Cop pack. I'm not sure if I have that or not. I don't think I do, but I might as well. And now if I ever want to watch the Beverly Hills Cop, I'm going to have to find them on streaming and maybe pay for them. And that'll be irritating. Might it just be easier to pick up a 3-pack? I presume Axel F will get no physical release. And just have them. Just have them. So I have them. Or is that stupid? I don't know anymore. I don't know. Because what if Beverly Hills Cop 2 disappears because of rights? What if it's not on streaming anymore? Which could just happen. Yeah. Sorry, I'm still bogged down in my ideas about physical media over here.
No, but I mean, somebody from whatever who owns the rights to Wang Chung's catalog could suddenly not want to renew some licensing thing, and then Beverly Hills Cop 2 is suddenly gone from Paramount Plus.
Well, there are sort of probably at this point many notorious films that are just not streaming. That you cannot watch for whatever reason because their rights are not available anymore. And so that you're feeling good if you have a physical copy of Near Dark at this point. Stuff like that. And a lot of them do kind of come back into circulation. A lot of the times you can see some films, but not always. And here's the thing, it wasn't like back when it was all discs and, Blockbuster videos, you could watch anything. You couldn't. You were limited by what your local video store carried. Mm-hmm. The chance to watch anything that anyone ever made, ever, wherever you wanted, that was if that time ever really existed, it was like a short window and it closed very fast. And maybe that's not a bad thing. I don't know.
I mean, near the end of VHS, there were really interesting obscure titles starting to come up. Turner was putting out pre-code box sets of really obscure pictures from the 1930s, and then DVD. They got more cautious again. They went back and it keeps cycling like that. Is this something that people are committed to? Okay, let's start taking chances, but not until then. And I don't know. I feel like home video has always initiated as a high-end pursuit, Laserdisc. If you're a real enthusiast, if you're a real audio video cinephile, then this is the format you commit to, and we're selling it to you. The Criterion collection starts there in Laserdisc.
Well,
and the commentary track starts because they were able to just sort of hack the way the sound channels were programmed on Laserdiscs.
But even before that, the original VHS tapes started out being sold for $75, $85 in 1980s dollars.
Well, sell-throughs, sold for rental So
it was a high-end pursuit then too.
Right, but I remember when Top Gun showed up for sell-through at $14.95. That was a revolution. Mm-hmm. The idea of buying a VHS to own.
I was so excited when that happened, and that when I was a kid and they started selling Disney movies with the white clamshell, boxes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was very exciting that you could own a picture. And then as a result, I remember when I was a child, there were probably, a half dozen films or so that we just watched on loop, over and over and over again. Disney's Cinderella being one of them, the things that they did make available for sale. Just not.
And of course, forced scarcity is already there because Disney already had their theatrical release program where movies only came out every 10 years or so, or came back every 10 years or so. And then on video, those VHS cassettes were only available for a certain time, and then they stopped production. And if you worked in a video store like I did in the late 80s and early 90s, because I'm turning 55 in 3 weeks, you became really good at VHS surgery, at keeping those precious surviving tapes operable and playable and rentable, because you weren't going to get any more.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's a wild time to even think of, like, really. I mean, it was, and maybe that's forced scarcity. I mean, I guess that was the idea behind it. It would increase demand, and it did feel more special. I don't know. Is that a thing that mattered to me because I was a kid, or because I was being used, or the marketing was working? I'm not sure. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes, but I don't know if something is less available now. I guess I'm still inclined to be like, maybe I ought to pick that up now while it's available. Although they don't really do that at this point. But
which criterions did you grab?
This time around, I ended up with let's see, I got Kuroneko, which is a Japanese horror film from the 1960s, which I have not seen, and that's because I've previously bought multiple Japanese horror films from the 1960s through Criterion, and I've loved them every time. And I got One False Move, the Carl Franklin neo noir.
Nice. I got Lone Star. I got Lone Star and I, Cuba, which is a brand new release.
I don't know that one.
And
cool.
Yeah, I, Cuba was a Soviet propaganda film about the Cuban Revolution, and it's all just the most incredibly elaborate, ambitious camera work you've ever seen. Cameras fly through buildings, over streets, into swimming pools. The party scene from Boogie Nights, total ripoff of a shot from I, Cuba.
That sounds awesome. Which Criterion titles did you buy, Al?
I have not bought any Criterion discs lately. The only hard disc I bought lately was the collector's edition of Black Hat for our Black Hat episode, because it was the only way to get the director's cut. It was not available streaming anywhere.
Well, that's the thing. Sometimes there is unique stuff that is only available through these now.
I mean,
I still think that a 4K disc looks better than a 4K stream.
Oh,
sure.
Definitely.
I mean, I don't think anyone disagree with that.
It's more reliable. There's going to be somewhere, even in a streaming movie, there's going to be a skip where maybe I have to pause it or back out of it and restart it just to like realign the tracks, or it's just going to be some lag. And I don't know. If that was all it was, I would say fine. Like, it's just we're living in a different era now. This is fine. It's a trade-off for not having clutter on our shelves and in our landfills and so forth. But I don't know. It's become so many different things now. And like I had a collection when I was like a teenager into college years, like during like the window where I was in the brief window before everything went streaming, but when like DVDs were becoming very popular and cheap. And
they were 15 years, they were huge, something like that.
But that was me sort of amassing my own private library, and you could take some pride in curating your own which things you had on disc to put on, in the dorm room, or after the house party winds down or whatever. And then when things shifted to streaming, I don't know. I didn't have like the hoarder problem of not being able to get rid of those discs. So I was like, well, I don't need, now that this is available streaming forever, is what it seemed like, I don't need to keep my disc copies of Heat and Top Gun or whatever. But now things have, the worm has turned once more. And as it went from there being the entire library of human experience seemed to be on 2 or 3 platforms, to now there's 11 or 12 platforms, and they're shifting on and off of those things constantly. And it just feels like it's not as permanent as it had seemed 10 or 12 years ago. And now I'm thinking, there have been times, especially in the last year or so, where I've just kind of find myself wishing that I still had a disc. Because one thing happened about a year ago, I was the last person on earth that still had the Netflix DVD mailing subscription. And I was using that up until the end, until they pulled the plug on it. And
it was a really good program. Yeah. I loved that. I used that for a very long time.
Even you didn't need the physical copy necessarily if you could put all those discs onto their streaming service. But what I liked about that service is it was this subscription curated service that fed me up a movie to watch every week. And it was curated by me of 7 or 8 years ago. Because that's how long my list was. And I can see what was it that 6 or 7 years ago I read something about online and threw onto the queue. And now I had an interest in seeing this at some point, but I don't remember why it was. And that turned out to be a really great, sort of a tasting menu where I knew I could trust the chef because it was me.
Yeah, much more reliable than an algorithm saying you might also like this. It's something that you knew you might also like.
You can't trust the algorithm because, one, the algorithms are both very advanced and very dumb. And so they'll make mistakes or hallucinate. And also, they have an ulterior motive. I mean, not even ulterior. The ulterior motive,
right?
I guess, is to give me something I like.
Going to sell you the new shit.
They're going to be pushing shit because it's an advertising feed as much as anything.
Yeah. Yeah, a friend of mine also rode Netflix DVD to the bitter end, and he still had a queue of some 40 titles, which he posted
300
online. And I was and I was able to dig into my personal library and loan him some 20 of those titles, so that he could at least finish up a bit of his queue.
Well, I mean, I have so many queues spread across so many different services and things, and the Netflix was the first one, and it's like you said, it got out of control, and it was kind of a surprise. Like, oh, I remember adding this at some point. At this point, I've just given up on ever completing a queue. You know, my Netflix queue is insane. It's stuff like from. I mean, a lot of stuff just drops off it while I'm not looking, and I don't even remember it ever existed at this point because there's so many different queues to manage on my services. Yeah.
That's the thing. I stopped even bothering with queues. Like very once in a while, I might have like a queue of 1 or 2 things on each one. But maybe this is like a psychological difference in the hoarding instinct. Because I think where I get the little dopamine hit is not so much from adding the thing to my shelf. It is checking it off the list. It's removing it from the queue, where I get the little hit of satisfaction.
You can get a hit from both. Like there's fun to be had in adding and subtracting to lists for sure.
I'm a junkie for fancy packaging, and this I didn't plan this. This is just on the shelf behind me. This is the original DVD box set for the original Battlestar Galactica.
Oh man,
and it's a goddamn
it's a 3D Cylon,
and I'm not letting go of that. Yes, with a lenticular eye.
I get why that was easily within arm shot, because it's just like, where does this thing go?
Well, I'm standing in my back room because it's the most soundproof, and it's where I just have the piles and piles of boxes.
Well, right. that is appropriate for today. Well, okay.
Because I have I recently scanned my library, and DVDs and Blu-rays combined, I have about 1,300 titles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You have me beat.
And I think
that seems like homeowner, not apartment renter. That's what.
No. Very, very much apartment renter. Very much apartment renter. I'm afraid.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
it is America in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Which is why we have this issue now of not being able to trust things. I mean, it seemed pretty obvious even for a time that if I keep up my HBO subscription, at the least, they'll have all the HBO-produced series on there in perpetuity. And even that is not as reliable anymore.
Nope. Some of it's not. Westworld, I think, is off there, and some other shit, too.
Yeah.
Not that I need it, but still, that kind of sucks. Yeah, that was actually a turning point, was the Zaslav era of Warner Brothers.
HBO Max debut, yeah.
Yeah, when it became clear.
And the day and date policy.
There would just be stuff that wouldn't be available anymore. Like you mentioned that Willow spinoff. You can't watch that anymore. That's gone.
Yep, it's gone.
Yeah, like if you want to go see what the Willow Legacy sequel was, tough shit. You missed your window. It is now
It
in
had
the
one
ether.
good episode. The Christian Slater episode, the only one worth watching.
Okay.
Well, I can't watch any of it now. I mean, maybe it'll resurface one day. Maybe it's gone forever. And there's stuff that's just going to be like that. And it will be like a marketing decision or a business decision, at least, from the companies involved. So that's making me feel even better about the discs. My wife has given me the okay on the discs, you know, as a result of the Zaslaving of these libraries. And, you know, that was one of the last checks on me, you know. That was something that was supposed to be kind of like keeping me in back. But she's like, no, I think this is a good thing you have. And I'm just like, oh boy. Uh-oh. I mean, I guess the new check is that like they're just not doing them anymore. You know, like Best Buy has stopped selling physical media of any kind, and that means no more idly browsing at Best Buy. It's you know, now it's only a trip if you want to go like get a new TV or something. Yeah. So
there's hardly anything left at Target either.
Yeah. Dune 2, that would be an obvious 4K purchase for me. Hasn't happened because I would have to like order it I would have to seek it out, and I can just in the time it takes to order it, I can just call it up and watch it on HBO right now. So it's becoming more purposeful.
There's something interesting about that to me, because I think you're right. It's been decades now since I have idly browsed DVD shelves at Best Buy, and yet I did do that a lot back in the day. And there was something about that
Suncoast Video.
But something about that was so much more satisfying than idly browsing a streaming library on Apple TV Plus or on Amazon Prime or whatever. It's not just like not as satisfying; it's aggravating. It's the other side of the coin completely. Like that. I don't know if it's that holding something in your hand gives you some sort of stimulus that flipping through things on a remote does not. But that people complain about, it's the decision paralysis of this. The streaming menu is endless, and how do you make a decision? And I wonder if that's physical versus digital, or if it's just that it's sort of the decision paralysis actually cuts against the idea of it's supposed to be convenient and instantaneous in your home. But actually there's this step I have to get through that is harder than it feels like it should be. And whereas when I went to Best Buy or Fry's back in the day to just walk around, like I knew what I was getting into when I got into the car to go to and got to the parking lot. And that was the point of the trip. And now the streaming menu feels like a speed bump on the way into the trip, or to the point of the trip.
Right. And that was if you went alone, because if you went with somebody or, a couple of family members, then that was the ritual. You'd roam the aisles and you'd argue over which one you wanted to rent and take home. And that was that was part of the experience.
Yeah. But when you're browsing the menu with family events, you don't have the spirited argument or the event. You just have people going, I don't know, I guess, if you want to. Like, and maybe this...
And only one of you has the remote.
Yeah.
But that person wants to defer to the other person because I hold all the power of the remote. But that person won't express an opinion. And I don't know.
Heavy is the brow that wears the crown.
How much does that coincide with just getting older, and where maybe we don't have the same spirited debates about which movie to watch when you're 38 versus when you're 19? But the technology of it seems to be part of it.
I mean, I have a friend. He's a projectionist, and he has a similarly, even I think, larger library than I do, and a fantastic theater setup, which I don't have. And when I go up, it'll be us and a couple of friends, and we'll have good food and drinks, and then we'll spend as much time talking about movies and talking about what we want to watch as actually watching anything. And I'm talking 3 hours on, 3 hours off.
Well.
It's why we have a podcast. It's a great time.
But you want the conversation to be after you watch the thing, about what you watched, not about just debating what should you watch.
There is, I think part of it, and I always believe this actually, is that there's a not so positive side of that too, which is that it's just the dopamine hit of capitalism. Going out and purchasing an object and now I possess this thing, and now I own the complete Universal Monsters collection. You know, like what a ridiculous thing to own that I do. It's just acquisition. You know, it's straight up, you know, who has the most toys, in this case, who has the most special editions or whatever. And that is just that is sort of objectively a not great reason to buy things. You know, it's the Funko Pop collecting again, but it is, you know, nonetheless true that it feels good to own a thing. I there's some movies I own digitally. Most of the Robert Eggers films, the Lighthouse and the Northman, which we've talked about, Al, movies that I'm kind of like really, really deeply love and want to revisit a lot. Where I was so anxious to watch them at home that I was just like, I can just buy it here. I don't have to wait for the actual physical copy. So I just purchased it on Prime, and then I own it, quote unquote, as a digital object. There's nothing physical. Yes, until they decide I don't anymore, I guess. And it bugs me. It bothers me that I don't have a physical copy of the Lighthouse that I can hold and then never lose, you know. And I'm just like, I could watch it literally anytime I want, but maybe I should buy it too. Maybe I should go get that physical media, and that's not something I can responsibly do at this point in my life. That would be the height of stupidity and selfishness to go purchase something that I already own and have no issue watching. I can watch it on my phone, which I can't do with a disc. Not that I'd want to, but, you know, like,
why would you watch a Robert Eggers movie on your phone? Yeah,
it would be dumb. But I have more facility with it technically now. More, you know, I guess the 4K looking nicer thing is the only real benefit, but it's sort of, you know, a negligible difference if we're being totally honest. And yet still, every time I'm like, I see that on my phone, I'm just like, or my television, I'm just like, I kind of wish I had that physical. Yeah,
I used to. Yeah, well, not tonight, but there's what tonight's not the Lighthouse night. What makes this a Lighthouse night? And I don't know why getting over that hump is so much harder on a digital menu than it is when pulling something off a shelf. But it is for me. I used to have a very different. Well, I mean, I still have this philosophy. A lot of this is old men yelling at clouds, and it's not so much the thing. As media shifts like this, it's not so much that things get worse; they just get different. And what the old people complained about was just things being different than what they were used to. And so, putting a DVD in the Xbox versus pulling up an app on there and running a streaming version of the same movie is a lateral difference. I mean, that's a slight improvement because there's a little less clutter and a little less work involved. And so, like, what was always, and beyond that, more in a more general philosophical sense, I tend to think that the most useless thing you can do is stand athwart history, screaming "stop" and wanting everything to stay the same. Like, it is, like, one, pointless because it has never worked and never will work once to try and freeze.
Right, history doesn't stop.
To try and freeze technology or culture in amber. And two, it's actually actively, if you could do it, it's actually really productive, and like you wouldn't actually want things to stay. You know, I don't think even the people that profess to want to make America great again wouldn't actually want to live in the 1950s forever. Like that is.
I read a great analysis, not to sidetrack. That somebody went and asked people who said they wanted to make America great again when America was great, and it almost always came down to when they were children, and their parents made all the decisions for them.
It's the same thing as.
I'd like that too. Actually, that'd be great. Let's go back to that.
It's the same thing as every single person will explain to you how Saturday Night Live has not been good since they were 19 years old. That's what,
12. The best 12
Saturday Night
12 to 18
Live
cast is the one you saw when you were 12. Yeah.
And I think that I always thought that was sort of part of this, and why I kind of like was a little proud of myself for not clinging to my DVD collection, saying, well, you know, whatever, it's a new thing. And then I thought there was an element of elitism to people who got really into the technical aspects of it and said, the 4K looks so much better. Sure. And I always kind of thought, well, even watching movies broken up by commercials and on an 18-inch screen, like really good movies could still grab me in the worst formats. And like the movie is the thing, the story is the thing more than getting into, but you're right. I don't understand the technical brilliance of Touch of Evil, but I know that Predator rules, and Predator rules on a Sunday afternoon on Fox just as well as it does on a 4K like restoration disc.
Yeah, but in olden times, you could catch the not director's cut version of Touch of Evil at 3 a.m. interspersed with mattress commercials, and still get a lot out of it. And I feel like watching movies, at least for me, does require a certain amount of work for me to really enjoy it. Like I have to make an appointment, I have to go, I have to say, and if it's a bad print, I have to sort of squint through the scratches and the pops and the or breaks in transmission if it's stream or whatever. If you have to really pay attention, then I think you get more out. And if it's something that can operate completely unassisted, then you're probably not going to pay as much attention to it. I've never been a guy who can have something running in the background while I do laundry or dishes or whatever. I have to be paying attention. And I don't know if that's just me.
Oh, I mean, I definitely have things running in the background all the time, but it's always stuff I've seen before. It can't be like
for the most part
a new thing.
Yeah. I mean, when I worked in video stores, when I was video store guy, then of course there was always something on the monitor. And as we mentioned in another time and place, very frequently it was Raising Arizona, which I eventually learned by heart. But to actually sit down, I never put anything I hadn't seen on the monitor. And when somebody else put something up, I was like, I haven't. I'd just get weird.
Yeah, that would bug me. So that was always like one of the things about a video store job that really seemed exciting to me was like you had to pick what movie is playing. You throw some movie on, and
my favorite thing. My favorite thing was to put on something weird and have somebody walking off the street and stare at the monitor for a bit and then go, "What is that?"
Yeah.
And that's the reaction I strive for is what is that? And sometimes what I was playing would be Star Wars, the first Star Wars, because because when it comes to trilogies, people only rent or watch the last chapter. They skip to the end. And so, people who grew up watching Return of the Jedi on continuous loop, you play Empire or Star Wars, and which one's this?
Yeah.
And that always fascinated me, even then.
That doesn't make any sense to me objectively, but also now thinking back, I definitely did see Return of the Jedi and Last Crusade first of those series.
Yep.
And I don't know that it was because of a decision
when you're a kid.
made. I think somebody else invented them.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a very strong memory of experiencing Star Wars as just sort of a large goulash stew that it was all one pile with no real start or finish. It was just kind of a series of episodes, and I didn't really understand the order or in the plotting when I first experienced it. I was just like, laser swords, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Chewbacca, like that was my experience of Star Wars. And I think it's probably most people's, because you get that before you understand chosen one narratives. It's one of the first movies a lot of people are going to see.
I mean, today, of course, you can be completely forgiven for having a Star Wars on a screen and wait, which one's this?
Well, yeah,
because there's so damn much of it.
Yeah,
but
well, maybe this is a time to talk about theatrical screening because that is an aspect that I did I've become more precious about, I guess. That so when streaming was first getting started, and people were it seemed like to me a bit of scaremongering about how it was going to kill the theatrical experience, and I thought, probably not, but also if it does, it does. That
if it dies, it dies.
I didn't think that would mean. But my thinking on it was that if we lose the current theatrical distribution model or experience, it doesn't mean we're going to not have movies anymore. Because it's going to be killed. Well, okay, I'm giving you my perspective from 2011. So
yeah,
okay.
And I was like, well, if it's going to be killed, it's only going to be killed by people watching so many movies at their home, and people are still be watching movies, and maybe some of us movie geeks are just kind of snobbish about having our little, sacrament of we like to go here.
Temple.
So we had to go to this place, do it just like this, and everybody needs to do it that way. Whereas I I built up my love of movies watching a lot of VHS and cable rotations and a lot of stuff on TV screens.
Mhm.
And that, didn't stop me from loving movies any less. So I thought, you know what? Things are going to get a little easier, but ultimately people are going to experience more film, and the appetite will only grow. So if it's in a different edifice, oh well, that's part of the shifting sands of time. And there's,
I mean, it's been peaks and valleys. I mean, in the 50s, movie going crashed, and it was because of just regular television. And that's when they started saying, okay, let's do 3D, let's do CinemaScope, let's do Cinerama, let's do something that you can't get at home. And then it happened again in the 80s, and it was just because of VHS. And people don't have to go. They can wait for video. Wait for video was the mantra even then. Now we say wait for streaming, or we don't even say wait for streaming because we don't even know if the movie plays in theaters at all. But the industry has regularly been challenged and in the 50s and 60s, I think, almost extinguished by the threat of other media. So it's nothing new. It's just exponentially more complicated, I think, in the streaming era. Just what exactly are we dealing with? And I think even the people who are making the decisions don't entirely know what the dynamic really is.
I think that's entirely clear to me that they have no idea what the dynamics are. That they're feeling.
There's no precedent. Yeah,
I think the thing that turned me around though was not so much streaming; it was smartphones, which I didn't see coming. But it's not so much that I need a big screen in order to appreciate a movie. Like that's true of some movies more than others. I'm glad I saw Dune on a really big screen. But there's other stuff, I can watch Deadpool and Wolverine at home. That'll be fine. And, but
like a comedy, it doesn't, it's the size of the crowd more than the size of the screen.
Yeah, but I also,
you want to hear other people you don't know laughing, and you want other people to be getting the jokes you don't get.
But I also watched a ton of comedies on Comedy Central and was like, and got to love some of them through that. Like, I think that's doable.
True.
The thing that really has turned me around on it is just how savaged my attention span has become with smartphones and the internet being there constantly, and how now I love going to the theater because it's so much easier to concentrate there. Than even when I'm watching a really good movie at home, I still am pulling up other things a couple times. I have to force myself. And I hate that, but it is true, and it's only going to be truer of people younger than me. So now I see a new added value to the theatrical experience that is more again, it's more about the phone than it is about the Netflix app or the HBO Max app or whatever.
But it's also about the schedule. You don't choose when the theatrical show starts. They tell you, and you go there when it's ready. And you make an appointment to pay attention.
The formality of all that is appealing to me. That makes it an event. It makes it, makes it. I think church is a good way of thinking of it. But
it puts a pin in your consciousness.
But going to church turned me off church for life as a kid. And now I found.
Well, I never did church.
Now I found
I'm the most irreligious person you'll ever meet.
Me too, but I can't buy it the other way around. And
same here.
Yeah.
But what I found is I now have like a data set to pull from of several years now. I see that I'm more forgiving of movies that I saw in the theater than I am of ones that I streamed even as new releases at home.
Totally. I think it's because you get the full experience of it. You have to kind of engage with it because you don't have other things that can draw you from it. That said, there has been an appreciable degradation of the cinematic experience too, though. I mean, it used to be movie palaces, the big giant screens and the cineramas. It's like airplane travel used to be. Men and women would dress up, look their finest to go to see the movies, and this changed into multiplexes and everything. But the biggest IP kind of got squeezed out. So if you go see a movie right now, you get to see Deadpool and Wolverine on 70% of the screens, Twisters on 20% of the screens, and then maybe if you're in the right market, you'll get to see something that had a limited release for the most part. And that's just how people go to the movies. And it's also the only movies that people go to. These things bomb unless they're the biggest movies of the year for the most part. It's been a murder house of a summer for for theatrical because people are saving their money.
But it's been a murder house for tent poles too. I mean, we had
exactly.
This summer was a bust until just now.
Well, I mean, Inside Out, and the Minions film did really well as well.
Yeah,
they're family audiences, but
Furiosa tanked and Fall Guy tanked.
Yeah, I think people were just like, well, I'm going to see Deadpool. I can't afford to do both. Is my guess. I assume because there just isn't the audience to sustain all these kinds of films anymore, which means it's going to become more and more focused and specific, you know? And Robert Downey Jr. will play Doom, just like you want. You know, it's going to be for the widest possible audiences.
I don't know, though. I don't know if I buy that there isn't the audience anymore. Because I think that the argument there would have to be that the audience has been eaten up by other things. So, like, video games would be one of the biggest competitors. I think it's more that, I mean, if you mean audiences, theatrical audiences, that's kind of true. Yeah. But I also think that we're seeing a bubble of some kind burst, or if not burst, then at least contract with all this streaming stuff. It seems to me the audience is constant and maybe even growing. People are watching more stuff than ever because it's more convenient than ever.
More of the same stuff, though. It's the, you know, all your Marvels and Star Wars. There's no room for Crimson Tide anymore. There's no room for When Harry Met Sally or genres that aren't, you know, kind of pre-sold.
Those are streaming series now, and I don't. But so we don't know exactly which ones of them are successful and what being successful even means. And I still think it's been going on for 10 years now, and they still haven't figured out how to measure, you know, whether, like, the presumed innocent series. What exactly? Yeah. What did that equal in dollars? Who knows? I don't think the people who made it and distributed it know. Although I'm sure they do pull a number out to put on a spreadsheet somewhere. And I think because of that, we might be seeing in the next couple of years is some sort of shift where, I mean, one, they're making a lot less streaming content, new content. And does that mean that certain stuff shifts back to theatrical? I don't know. Maybe a little.
I mean, the guy who was at Netflix left in March, and he was the guy who was stumping for theatrical release left, and now he's trying to restart United Artists and push theatrical releases there, and we'll see if it happens. But Netflix is getting the windows that we've seen at my theater for the Netflix movies we get. They've been getting shorter. They were like a guaranteed 2 weeks last year, and now most of them are down to 1 week. And again, they get no promotion. It's a miracle if anybody shows up for them. Some of them are good, some of them are trash. I was the theater chain I worked for years and years has been what they used to call art house, documentaries, foreign films, independents.
Oh, cool.
And so, but also with some crossover of big ticket items. So, you know, when I started at the California, which will never reopen, the movies playing were Chasing Amy and as I recall, Con Air. So we had a mix. And you don't get a Kevin Smith movie in the theaters anymore.
Well, that's probably an example of doesn't need to be seen on a big screen necessarily.
But I'll tell you what we did get in theaters, and which did play very well with a specific audience, was I Saw the TV Glow.
I love that.
This is a movie I'm not sure what you get out of it watching it at home versus in a darkened room full of like-minded people. And that's a totally hypnotic experience when you can't turn away from it.
That's a good one, man. That was a nice theatrical experience this year. I think that played well at home too, because it's about streaming shows, or not streaming shows. It's a bit episode show.
It gets into streaming. Yeah, it starts with broadcast and videotape, which I appreciate.
Well, that is it. I mean, the very main appeal of that movie is that it's about kind of analog media in a way. It's about how you experienced Buffy the Vampire Slayer in the 90s or whatever.
Right. Well, it's about memory. It's about like you say, it's about how you experience, not so much about the medium, but how it sat in your brain and what it did to you. When he goes back years later to watch the show and finds that it was basically Teletubbies, and what was he getting out of it?
It's so great.
Well,
Yeah, you should see that when you get a chance, Al. Fucking,
Yeah.
it's one of the best films of the year.
but the thing about that is I think part of it's the medium in which you saw it, and part of it is other factors. Like what I
Mhm.
would like to sort of tease out the difference between, we all have a sense that like things are not hitting in the same way. Like Con Air was a bigger deal than it would be if you released that same type of movie today. And that's because it would go to streaming instead of to the theater. But it's also, I think, just as much as that, it's not so much that, seeing it in this different building makes a difference as seeing it on your couch. Maybe that's part of it, but part of it's also just that when Connor came out in 1998, there were, I'll pull the number out of my ass, but let's say 400 wide released movies really in 1998.
Sure.
And there are probably 1,400 wide or streaming releases that are going to take place in the next 2 months. And so is it because are things not feeling like they're connecting us culturally as much anymore because we are not going to the theater to sit together in the dark together? Or is it just because there is such a flood of everything that everything flows over as much faster? We don't spend three weeks with Con Air being the biggest weekend movie in America. Yeah, no, it is both.
Why not both? The monoculture is dying.
I don't think it's
not a thing.
any one concept.
You're right.
I don't think it's any one factor.
It's never an or. It's always an and for every cultural question you might ever ask.
Right.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about quarantine and the theaters shutting down for a year and a half.
Oh, that fucked everything up in some ways that we'll never fully be able to articulate or understand, I'm sure. Yeah.
Indeed. I mean, for me, it means that I've lost employment at 3 theaters in a row. And it's been a bit of a slow rolling trauma.
Well, even without that, I do think that we are still deeply fucked up by the whole quarantine thing in ways that nobody has fully articulated yet.
Like, we won't even understand.
We still kind of deny that was a thing that happened. It feels like culturally, but that's a whole can of worms to open up 52 minutes into this.
Indeed. I wanted to make sure it got in there, though.
I mean, I guess this lands in the place that I'm where it started for me, which is just like, well, I guess I'm just going to keep having a bunch of discs of movies sitting in this corner of my room here, and I will drag them with me through life. Anytime I move, there'll be several boxes of discs. I'll just be carrying them around like Jacob Marley.
I mean, I know people who have taken their physical collections and ripped them to giant hard drives and disposed of the physical stuff.
I need
my Cylon head.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember having being kind of relieved when I didn't need CDs anymore. Yeah. When I was like, I can get rid of all this stuff. It's, all this clutter. All these discs that are taking up space, and I don't have to deal with CD players. And it is objectively much easier to listen to music. But here's the thing. Now I listen to the same fucking music that I listened to when I was a teenager and in my 20s. And that's it. I don't seek out new music. I don't really have much knowledge of music anymore. It's just something that has a less pivotal role in my life. Podcasts, part of that too. But it is kind of like, well, maybe there's something important about having the kind of the physical objects.
I think that's one that's as much about just, becoming middle-aged as it is about shifting technology. But I feel you're right, though.
And it's not or.
Yeah. And I mean, you're right. Getting rid of my CD collection and my DVD collection was a thing that happened at the same time. And it's been a much smoother transition musically, I would say. I mean, there are vinyl collectors, people that are physical media collectors in the music sense as well. But I've never been that. And the weird place where I am, a Luddite, is that I have never gotten an e-reader. I want a physical book in my hand. And I like having my bookshelf.
Yeah, same.
That is, just the colors on my bookshelf are aesthetically pleasing to me, and I want to keep that there. But also, I have completely stopped reading books compared to when I was in my 20s.
Well, yeah. That's I blame the smartphone for that one, man. I made
and podcasts.
I'm constantly trying to make an effort, but
Yeah, smartphones and podcasts
are
a big part of that too.
Mm-hmm.
But that's yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to go back to. I'm not going to recreate a physical library at this point. I think maybe it's probably as much as anything, it's just refusal to make another life change. At this, I'm just going to write it out and be unhappy at this point because I'm now middle aged. But
Well, also, the disc libraries, by the way, may not last forever, as it turns out. There's this thing called disc rot.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
They just, they'll just break eventually. Yeah.
Well, everything falls apart. I remember videotape was only supposed to have a shelf life of 15 years. It's a miracle that any of those still run if you have a machine that can run them. I talked to the kids today. I say, hey, I'll loan you this movie. And they don't have anything to play it on, even if it's a Blu-ray.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
But
you have to keep a device functional. There's people with Laserdisc players and Betamax players that you have to go to a specialty place to get them repaired. So, I mean, am I thinking one upside of this, but that I will say, even if it's mainly just that I don't want to make a change, I'll tell myself not having a physical library and forcing me onto the digital streaming menus is an impetus for me to watch new things more than rewatch old things. So.
Yeah, I don't need help on that though. I'm always trying to watch new things. It seems like I kind of like, on the opposite side, kind of like revisiting stuff, and having a physical copy of it makes that something that I will endeavor to do. Like maybe I will go back and watch that. I haven't seen that in like 6 years. And it keeps movies kind of like in my life in a way. Like that I still have a firm hold on some of these things. Years later is because I own a copy of it.
Yeah.
I mean, even then, like the thing that I originally told myself when I was purchasing these as a teenager, which was just like, well, I can watch Sleepy Hollow whenever I want now, Well, it turns out I do watch Sleepy Hollow a lot. No, I do watch that one a lot because it's, it's a good seasonal watch. It's a good Halloween movie, and I've seen it a number of times because I own a copy of it now. That's just an example. There's tons of movies like that maintain presence in my life because I have a copy of it, and therefore I'm kind of a little bit more inclined to watch it than I would have been. So yeah, I'm not getting rid of them. I mean, I know that there's no value in selling them. That's for sure. Unless I want store credit at a place that sells DVDs. Right. So that's it. It's get rid of them for good, or just have them. And for the most part, I think it's worthwhile to have them, or at least I'd tell myself so.
I keep thinking how strange it is that we've lived through the beginning, middle, and end of the age of physical media, just in our lifetimes.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I remember when Betamax hit the scene, and there were lawsuits. There was absolute panic. You can't record a TV show off that's ours. You can't have that in your own personal possession. That's our property, and that was a big thing for a long time.
Can you even imagine recording something off the air at this point? What would there's no reason for that.
Well, I mean,
just find it on YouTube.
DVR things all the time, but I guess even that, I not as much as I used to, because now things do go up on streaming. Like I don't, but I still, if it's something I really care about, it's the new House of the Dragon. I do DVR that and watch the DVR version rather than rely on the app, because I trust the DVR a little more than I do the app.
I use the app for it, even if I'm watching it live.
No, I mean, I'll do it. I'll do them both, but I have a recording set, and look, we haven't solved anything here.
No, we haven't. Just open more questions. But this was fascinating. This was really interesting. Thank you for joining us on this tour. This has been great. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, we might come back to this at some point. This seems like a big topic. So if people like it, I don't know. Yeah. All right. And thank you all for listening. This has been Framework. And for now, the balcony is closed.
2 thumbs up.